In America, people often joke, if everything fails, let's just fire up the BBQ and wait out the storm. As for Canadians, they smile, pour another cup of coffee, and quietly pack their bags, either to another province or another country. But sometimes, even optimism and humor can't cover up a cold truth. There are states in the U.S. that aren't just struggling. They're hanging by a thread on the edge of collapse. When hospitals shut down, schools lose teachers mid-semester, and states have to beg the federal government just to keep the lights on. The question is no longer do we have a problem, but rather, how much longer until that fragile thread snaps? Illinois, the long shadow of yesterday. Illinois was once a place people came to dream big and start fresh. A state of hard-working folks, birthplace of sports legends, historic presidents, and deep-dish pizzas that warmed both bellies and hearts. But then, one fine day, or perhaps after years of relentless financial downpour, people realized that the Illinois dream was now being paid in installments, with the future. Walk through the town south of Chicago, and you'll see it's not in the headlines, it's in the eyes of shop owners who've taken down their signs, in the hollow echo of quiet streets, and in schools where only echoes remain. Illinois still stands, like a proud old veteran, but the burden on its shoulders keeps piling up, and there aren't many levers left to pull. When the past is an interest-free loan until it's due year after year, Illinois has become a living lesson in one truth: public spending without reform is a habit more dangerous than morning caffeine. With pension debt surpassing $140 billion, the state is no longer in the problematic category. It has officially entered flashing red light status. The problem isn't just in the numbers, but in the structure. A pension system promised during golden years has now become an inescapable weight, a financial time bomb ticking louder each day. Meanwhile, politicians are still debating, as if arguing long enough will magically patch the budget hole. People leave, but taxes stay. If you've ever seen a beautiful house in suburban Illinois stay on the market forever, don't rush to blame the feng shui. Just check the property tax notice next to it. While neighboring states like Indiana and Iowa beckon with friendlier taxes and livable costs, Illinois insists on staying unique, with some of the highest taxes in the nation. The result? Families move out, businesses follow, schools lose funding, communities lose momentum, and then the vicious cycle starts swallowing itself. The Chicago mask and the silent town's Chicago, with the shine of a global city, often makes people forget that the rest of Illinois is quietly struggling. But if you turn off Michigan Avenue, step away from Millennium Park's lights, and head west or south, you'll find another world, where factories are shuttered, classrooms are half full, and the biggest morning question is, when will the post office close too? Towns like Decatur, Peoria, or Cairo, not Egypt, but the far southern corner of the state, no longer hope for re-industrialization. They need something else, a reason to stay. But Illinoisans don't lack grit. Still, if there's one thing Americans and Canadians who used to drive through on their way to Florida can agree on, it's this: Illinoisans keep their sense of humor through the crisis. Around here, you'll still hear things like, "We're broke, but hey, the meat pie's still amazing." Taxes went up. Great excuse to jog more and stay out of the house. If the state budget won't save the schools, we'll teach the kids in the pizza shop. Eat and learn. And somewhere out there, mechanics are opening their own garages, teachers are moving to online platforms, and small communities are holding together, not because of policy, but because of neighborly loyalty. Can the future wait for reform? Illinois doesn't need more promises. They've had enough. What they need is action. Restructuring pensions, tax reform, targeted investment, and transparent budgeting. But above all, they need leaders willing to take responsibility. Not to cast blame, but to fix a house leaking from roof to foundation. And while waiting for that to happen, Illinoisans still live, still fight, still draw straws to see if this week's money goes to the electric bill or school books. Because, as the U.S.-Canada spirit often jokes together, if we haven't hit rock bottom yet, we might as well learn to slide down with style. New Jersey, beautiful from afar, tiring up close. If you stand on the other side of the Hudson River and look across to New Jersey at sunset, you'll see an almost perfect picture. A quiet skyline, charming houses that look like they came straight out of a TV show, and the glow of highways that are always busy. Just like the American dream itself. But then you drive in, take a turn off Garden State Parkway, and the feeling begins to shift. Not loud, not dramatic, just a strange feeling in the palm of your hand, as if this place was once strong, solid, but is now smiling through a lingering fever that won't break. New Jersey is a beautiful equation. If you're only doing the math on location, it sits almost perfectly between two of America's biggest economic centers, New York and Philadelphia. It has coastline, a dense transportation network, and a population with a high median income. On paper, this should be a dream state. But here's the irony. The closer you are to success, the easier it is to feel lost. When the wallet is full, but the debt is fuller, New Jersey could be compared to an office worker in an Armani suit. Elegant on the outside, but with credit card debt higher than their monthly salary. For years, this state has spent as if tomorrow were a national holiday, but when tomorrow comes, the bill is still due in real dollars. The state's pension debt ranks among the highest in the country. The irony is, New Jerseyans don't lack money. They lack policy that knows how to keep it. Property taxes here are among the highest in America, yet the budget remains stretched thin. In some places, residents pay nearly $20,000 a year just to keep the house their families lived in for 3 generations. "My house is my biggest asset," said a resident of Newark. "Every year I look at my tax bill and I just wish I'd bought a moving truck instead of a home." When people leave faster than policies arrive last year, over 70,000 people left New Jersey, enough to fill an entire NFL stadium. These folks weren't angry. They were just tired. They left looking for a place with less pressure, fewer bills, and maybe a gas station instead of 2 train tickets. And when people leave, businesses start to close. Cities lose tax revenue. Schools lose funding. Streetlights still shine, but people's spirits have dimmed a little. You can see it in Camden, once a buzzing industrial hub, now lined with empty houses and playgrounds without children. Or Trenton, the state capital, still home to grand government buildings, but the neighborhoods around it have faded like an overexposed photograph. And yet, New Jersey still laughs. Amid all this worry, New Jerseyans still keep their trademark attitude, refusal to quit. People here often say, "If it rains taxes, we'll wear raincoats," with tracking numbers for our complaints. You might see groups of residents organizing free classes in local parks, bakery owners donating food to neighbors struggling through winter, or young people turning empty parking lots into weekend art fairs. In New Jersey, amid the chaos, people still find ways to be themselves and help each other avoid hitting rock bottom. The problem isn't a lack of hope, it's that hope is waiting in line. Reform in New Jersey isn't non-existent, it's just slow. Efforts to narrow deficits, restructure pensions, and shift the economy are emerging, but progress moves about as fast as NJ Transit on a Monday morning. Meanwhile, small towns are trying to survive through creative reinvention. Atlantic City is working to redefine itself beyond casinos. Newark is focusing on technology and logistics. And neighborhoods are learning to organize from the ground up. Because if they wait for change to come from the top, it might be too late. Can New Jersey come back? Absolutely, but not by clinging to the past. New Jersey needs to let go of old pride and start building something more honest. A foundation not just based on geography, but on the belief that the people here deserve a future, not just a bill. And in the meantime, the people keep smiling, still driving through toll booths with one hand holding coffee and the other, giving a slight shake of the head. Welcome to New Jersey, where we charge you to feel legally annoyed. Connecticut, when sophistication can't save the account. There are places that look like they came straight out of a Hallmark movie. White houses with steep roofs, a flagpole on the lawn, a rustic wooden cafe where the owner knows every customer's name. Connecticut is one of those, a living postcard of America's Northeast. But, as Canadians often say when evaluating a confusing trade partner, looks good on the outside, but it's not easy to digest. And Connecticut, beneath its Ivy League gloss and autumn leaf forests, is grappling with a reality far from poetic. Tangled finances, a shrinking population, and an economic structure aging with every morning financial bulletin. When wealth becomes a burden. Connecticut was once the place where successful New Yorkers retired in style. Close to Wall Street, far enough to have a backyard. But the price of that premium is now the very thing trapping the state. Because wealth in Connecticut no longer spreads, it clusters. Towns like Greenwich still shimmer with multi-million-dollar mansions and keypad-locked iron gates, but drive just 40 minutes and you'll find neighborhoods in Hartford or Bridgeport struggling to pay preschool tuition, let alone save for retirement. To put it in American humor, Connecticut is a state that can have million-dollar homes and hospitals that need community fundraisers to buy a new water filter. Industrial memories can't pay today's bills. The 20th century was Connecticut's golden age, with factories making guns, watches, engines, all part of that image of strong American industry. But, like an old radio forgotten in the attic, those factories now live only in memory, and property deeds no one knows how to sell. The problem is, this state still spends like it's living in that golden age. A massive pension fund, bloated administrative costs, and billions of dollars tied up in financial commitments that haven't been adjusted. This makes small cities, those reliant on state funding, even more suffocated. Necessary investments in infrastructure, schools, and hospitals are postponed indefinitely, and residents are beginning to look across the border. Massachusetts and New Hampshire suddenly feel like reasonable exits for those who've lost their patience. Young people aren't leaving because they're bored. They just have no choice. In quiet surveys, young people in Connecticut often offer a comment that's gentle but thought-provoking. This place is beautiful, but I don't see myself in its future. It's not criticism, it's regret. As tuition climbs, housing prices soar, and creative jobs cluster in New York or Boston, the younger generation leaves not because they hate their hometown, but because they love their own future more. There are even cases where Canadians come here for university, but after graduating, choose to settle in Texas. Not because they love the heat, but because they can't afford a small apartment in Stamford, where just opening the window lets you hear the budget groaning. But no one in Connecticut gives up easily. Still, if you think Connecticut is just a land of complainers and quitters, you haven't met the small shop owners in New Haven who still open every morning, the nurses in Waterbury grinding through extra shifts, or the teachers in Norwalk building classrooms from their own pockets. People here aren't short on will, they're short on top-down coordination. They're ready to change, but the system still runs on old logic. Collect more, spend even more, and reform. Maybe next session. Just like Canadians can smile for selfies in the middle of a snowstorm, the people of Connecticut still find humor in hard times. An elderly lady in Torrington once said, "You know, dear, if the state budget is late again, I'll just go attend the legislature myself. But I'll have to wait and see if gas prices drop this week first." What does Connecticut need? Not another round of emergency funding, but a strategic overhaul. A new foundation that balances public spending, policies to retain young people, and the regeneration of an employment ecosystem. Because without that, Connecticut will remain a place nice to stroll through, but hard to live in. And in the meantime, people will still brew coffee, mow lawns, and tell each other, "We used to make the clocks that kept the country on time. Maybe it's time we reset our own minute hand." Kentucky, where hope is slow but never fades. In Kentucky, people don't need much to be happy. A sunny afternoon, a glass of iced tea with enough ice cubes, and a baseball game playing on an old radio. This is the land where the sound of a banjo can drown out a storm, where old coal miners still carry in their eyes the kind of resilience that looks like they're digging for hope, not just coal. But then, like the coal dust still hanging in the air, the cracks in Kentucky run not only through its roads, but through its dreams. When the economy stands on three legs, and all three are shaky, Kentucky once stood strong thanks to three pillars: coal, manufacturing, and government aid. But over the past decade, each of these pillars has started to crumble. Not with loud crashes, but with quiet, frightening slips. Coal is no longer king. Towns like Hazard, Pikeville, or Harlan that once relied completely on the mines are now as empty as train stations at the end of the day. The heavy air isn't just from the environment, but from a lingering feeling: we've been left behind. As for manufacturing, assembly lines have been replaced by automation. The jobs that once supported entire families now live only in the picture frames on the wooden shelves. And aid? It's there, but it can't fix everything. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a crack that runs from the roof to the foundation. It might hold today, but it makes no promises for tomorrow. Schools crumbling, hospitals closing, but communities still opening their hearts. In many eastern mountain counties, teachers still teach in classrooms with peeling paint, and students bring homemade lunch. Not by choice, but because schools can't afford free meals anymore. In rural areas, the nearest hospital can be an hour's drive away, and people must choose: wait out the pain till morning, or go into debt they might never repay if they seek emergency care. Yet, even in those conditions, Kentuckians carry an inexplicable faith that if the community holds tight, no one falls all the way down. Here, community meals are still held regularly. The person grilling will grill for the whole block. The elderly neighbor doesn't need to book a doctor's appointment, because three close friends have already learned first aid through YouTube. And just like a Canadian once said while learning golf here, people in Kentucky may not have everything, but they'll always have a smile and a piece of cornbread for you. A crisis named, "I don't know if my kids will stay." What hurts more than a negative budget? It's when an entire generation no longer believes in the land where they were born. Graduating classes in Lexington, Bowling Green, or Richmond pack their bags and leave. Not because they hate home, but because staying feels like gambling with the future. A father tells his son, "You can stay and do anything." The son stays silent, only looking toward Nashville, just a few hours away, but somehow closer to the dream. That's not betrayal. It's the result of a system too slow to change for the very people it needs to hold on to. But Kentucky isn't standing still. It's just moving slowly. From local fairs to coding classes held in small libraries, change has begun. Not through million-dollar programs, but through quiet footsteps. There's a town experimenting with rural tourism, where guests can sleep in log cabins, sip apple cider, and hear stories about coal mines. Some areas are welcoming a wave of health tech startups from nearby universities. A school in Moorhead is blending traditional teaching with digital skills, not to catch up with Silicon Valley, but to keep students from leaving after graduation. Kentuckians understand they don't need to be the fastest, they just need to keep going. And still, they sing in small bars across Appalachia. You'll still hear the sound of guitars, the clap of hands, and voices singing about their home. A place where, no matter how many seasons the wind has battered, trees still grow, people still live, and dreams are still shared through every verse. A local once told a Canadian reporter, "We may not win everything, but if life had a qualifying round, Kentucky would always make the cut. Because here, we never let go." Louisiana, sinking land, steadfast spirit. If you've ever set foot in Louisiana, even just once, you'll understand why people talk about this place, not just in numbers, but in emotions. This is the land of jazz horns ringing out from balconies, of spicy gumbo simmering in big pots, of parades marching on even through heavy rain. In Louisiana, people live with storms the way you live with rush hour, exhausting, but never giving up. But amid the trumpet melodies and candlelight in cocktail glasses at night, there's another harmony playing, a soundtrack of broken infrastructure, strained budgets, and every inch of land slowly sinking into the sea. When land is actually disappearing. This is not a metaphor, not a clickbait title. Just sit on Louisiana's coastal edge, pour yourself a glass of iced tea, and wait exactly 60 minutes, and a full-size football field's worth of land will vanish beneath the water. Every hour, the state loses an area that size. Why? A combination of natural erosion, rising seas from climate change, and a tangled network of canals carved by the oil industry for decades. A Bayou resident once half-joked, half-confessed to a Canadian reporter, "You don't buy raised houses here to look fancy. You buy them so you don't have to swim to the living room after it rains." Shifting economy, rooted culture. Louisiana once thrived on oil, and in many ways still does. But today's energy market is no longer as steady as a Cajun raft gliding through the wetlands. As oil prices rise and fall like a roller coaster, the towns that depend on it get pulled along, like boats without oars. Refineries shut down, businesses relocate. Towns like Houma and Morgan City that once thrived on offshore rigs now survive on memories. Tourism still shines, but not everyone has a hotel near Bourbon Street or takes selfies in the French Quarter. In rural areas, especially in coastal parishes, schools still struggle with staff shortages, hospitals lack proper equipment, and the power grid flickers like a neon bar sign at 3 a.m. When natural disasters are no longer if, but when, Louisiana doesn't wait to be asked, "Will there be a storm this year?" They're always prepping for which storm this year will hit our home. Every summer, residents from Baton Rouge to Lake Charles stock up on backup batteries, board up their windows, and calculate their insurance payments, which fewer and fewer people can afford. Insurance companies are pulling out of the state like early party guests, quietly and inevitably. People here once rose back up after Katrina. But Katrina left a scar too. The belief that things will be okay turned into things will be okay if we do it ourselves. So people rebuild their homes, form rescue groups, and create mutual aid networks, while the state government is still discussing last year's budget. But who says Louisiana is weak? Louisianans are the kind of people who can paddle a canoe through floodwater while cooking jambalaya on a portable gas stove. The kind who lose power and Wi-Fi, but still live stream backyard concerts. The kind who believe that as long as you're still dancing, life's still got rhythm. In rural schools, teachers organize cultural festivals to keep kids from dropping out. In short-staffed hospitals, doctors rotate shifts so every patient still gets personal care. In struggling neighborhoods, restaurants portion out meals for elderly neighbors. No receipt, no paperwork, just kindness. And in the middle of a torrential downpour, someone still shouts through a loudspeaker, "It's okay, we're still doing Mardi Gras, just wear a purple raincoat." What Louisiana needs isn't a miracle, it's meaningful investment. Louisiana doesn't ask for pity. What they need is a realistic plan to face climate change, reinforce infrastructure, and develop a more diverse economy. From renewable energy to sustainable tourism tech, from vocational education to community health care, the potential is still here. But without timely resources, this place, once the cultural gateway of America, could become a symbol of neglect. And the people here? They deserve better than that. Pennsylvania. Glorious past, future updating. If America had a family photo album, Pennsylvania would surely be the black and white picture on the first page. A respected uncle with oil-stained hands and eyes carrying a century of industry. From the steel mills of Pittsburgh to ships leaving the docks of Philly, this state was once the sweat-powered engine that pulled America into the modern age. But then that engine didn't break. It got lost in an economic operating system update. Today, Pennsylvania still holds the dignified shape of its past, but beneath the vintage paint are cracks stretching across the map. From aging industrial towns to sparsely populated rural counties, even to urban centers that still seem lit up, all walking into the 21st century in worn-out shoes. When the factories go dark, but dreams haven't learned a new trade. In Johnstown, Wilkes-Barre, or Erie, if you ask an older resident, "What did you used to do?" chances are the answer starts with, "Back in the day, I was..." The stories are filled with pride. Steel worker, crane operator in the coal mines, assembly line technician. But the common thread is, all of it is in the past tense. Today, many areas in this state feel like blurry copies of their former selves. Abandoned malls, neighborhoods with more empty homes than weekly lottery players. Places that once invented whole fields of physics, now borrowing funds to fix a high school roof. It's not just about jobs, it's the void of hope. Unemployment isn't the worst part. The worst part is when you can't imagine what you'll do next. For many young people growing up in Pennsylvania's old towns, the scary thing isn't losing a job. It's not knowing which one is worth learning in the first place. The factories aren't coming back. The tech hubs haven't arrived. And in the meantime, people shift into survival mode. Driving Uber in a small town, even if there are only 2 cafes. Taking extra hours at the pharmacy, or selling handmade crafts online, hoping someone out there still believes. A guy in Scranton once joked, "My town has 3 main jobs: job hunting, talking about jobs, and asking each other when to leave." But Pennsylvania isn't just ashes, it's got embers. Amid the industrial remains, there are small flames still glowing. Pittsburgh is no longer the steel city. It's a hub for robotics and artificial intelligence. Philadelphia isn't just home to the Liberty Bell, it's where health startups are experimenting with the future. The issue is that light hasn't spread far enough. For every innovation hub, there are dozens of towns still out of signal. Schools lack resources. Public transit systems feel like mountain Wi-Fi. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Meanwhile, the opioid crisis spreads silently. In some counties, overdose deaths outnumber car crashes. But instead of panic, Pennsylvanians respond by starting small, opening local rehab centers, running informal support groups in barbershops or taverns, because here, sometimes real conversation starts with a beer and a nod. Pennsylvanians don't run. They wait for the gears to realign. There's something Canadians really appreciate when visiting Pennsylvania. That quiet, stubborn resilience. Not flashy, not loud, but always someone trying to weld the old machine back together, hosting a high school career fair, or quietly opening a new shop in an empty neighborhood, as if saying to themselves, "I don't have to save the whole town, just keep the lights on." In the countryside, farmers mix organic vegetables with baking classes. In Bethlehem, an old church becomes a co-working space for small businesses. In Lancaster, the Amish hold fast to their traditional way of life, but don't hesitate to sell honey on TikTok, via someone outside the community, of course. Pennsylvania doesn't need to be remade, it just needs to be continued. This is a state that doesn't ask to be rescued, just to be heard. It has heritage, it has people, it has an unshakable spirit. It just needs a smart enough ecosystem to connect past and future. Because if you've ever eaten a slice of cheesecake in rural Pennsylvania, you'll understand. Some things may seem old, but they still hold a very special flavor. And here, people aren't afraid to keep walking the long road as long as someone walks with them, and there's still a reason to take the next step. California. The sun still shines, but shadows grow long. California, the name that makes the world picture endless beaches, ever-growing tech giants, and mornings where the sun beams through EV windows as if today was coded for success. But ask a native from Fresno or a teacher in Bakersfield, and they'll tell you this. Behind that glamour, cracks spider across the roads, roofs leak, and questions go unanswered. In California, everything seems bigger, prettier, faster, even the problems. When dreams become luxuries, this was once the place you came to start over. Now it seems you need financial ground so solid it stretches back. 3 generations. Rent is as steep as the Sierra Nevada peaks, and buying a home in San Francisco is like trying to book a ticket to space. The tech might exist, but your wallet won't lift off. Not only that, but just living normally in California is a high-energy sport. A 6-figure nurse still has to share a room. A teacher drives 90 minutes each morning to get to class. A family with 2 kids must choose between paying the insurance or funding their child's math tutoring. A Canadian who lived in Santa Monica jokingly said, "I didn't leave because I didn't love California. I left because I needed a place where a taco doesn't cost as much as a domestic flight." When fire, drought, and floods hit, sometimes all at once, California is where you can ski in the morning and surf in the afternoon. But now, it's also where you can face a historic drought, a wildland blaze, and a highway flood, all in a single week. The power grid, once a tech pride, now rotates blackouts like passing around candles. Insurance companies are fleeing high-risk zones, leaving homeowners either unable to insure their homes or paying so much they have to trade in their car just to cover costs. And it's not just the natural environment heating up. The social climate is blazing too. Inequality is glaring. One side hosts sleek billion-dollar HQs. The other side holds tent cities sprawling through Venice Beach, Oakland, or near Los Angeles City Hall. You can see both future and fracture, captured in one Instagram frame. But don't mistake Californians for quitting Californians, react the very California way. When housing prices spike, they form co-living communities. When schools lack teachers, they teach online or in garden plots. When the power goes out, they flip on solar panels, call neighbors over for a meal, and live stream it like it's a filter preset mandatory event. Creativity here never dies. It just transforms. From rebuilt eco-friendly neighborhoods after wildfire, to small farms in the Central Valley going regenerative, from homeless resettlement startups using AI, to moms launching apps to organize Homework groups in parks. The cost of leading. What happens when no one can keep up? California isn't just a state, it's the beta version of the rest of America. Big trends start here. Tech, environment, lifestyle, culture. But now a bigger question looms. Can the state keep pioneering when the pioneers themselves are walking away? From 2020 to 2023, over 500,000 people left California. Not just the poor, but also the middle class, nurses, teachers, technicians, all those who once were the state's backbone. They moved to Texas, Idaho, Nevada, Arizona, not to become someone new, but to be themselves. For less cost. Yet sunlight remains, and hope grows from cracks. And you know what's special? Whether they stay or leave, many still call California home. Because in every resident is a belief. We can fix it. Maybe not overnight. Maybe not easy. But if any place can ride the big waves, it's the one that once created them. California doesn't need a miracle. It needs time to rebuild. Policies that work on paper and in practice, and leaders patient enough to separate sunshine from smoke. Because even cracked and unsure, this place remains a land of opportunity and of stories rising brilliantly, like vineyards sprouting on dry soil, beautiful, resilient, and with a flavor all its own.